Welcome back. Scoopy is here. He's going to update us with where his squad is at and maybe a bit of a life update as well. Before we get into really the big bulk of this is going to be JDB transfers. Who we're going to go? Are we going to straight swap? Are we going to double trade to get the Cleary? Plenty happening. Scoop, what's going on?
Yeah, moving around a lot in my life currently. My team's moving around and I can make some moves this week. Got 6, got slapped in the face by a late Cleary century, but in good position to move up into the top 100.
Beautiful. Are you looking to get Cleary this week or?
Yes, I think it's gonna be really difficult to make any ranks with Hines and the Sharks struggling a bit. And Cleary just coming back in the Panthers looking to dominate.
Very much so. You have a lot of halves, by the way. How's that going to play out?
It's a tough one. I've got 3 sets of trades that I'm potentially looking at. Has it sort of updated to give me Hines and Cleary in there at the moment?
No, have you already got that in? This is with last week's result.
That's one of the trades that I've got. Yeah. So
okay.
I've got a couple of options because I've got 6 trades and Jack DeBellin and a million centers and a few things that I can do. So it could be some really interesting options on the table, like potentially a Manu and a DeBellin to a Cleary and like a backup hooker. Like I might go even like a Cheese or Coruscant's 18th man. Another option is to go really spicy, try and be greedy, keep both Hines and Cleary and trade Drinkwater to Latrell and then go JDB to Cleary and keep the gun halves.
Drinkwater.
But I do have a lot of halves if I go for that. So possibly not. Or JDB plus one of my 4 gun halves to Cleary plus a center looper for the 3 remaining ones. So they're all sort of pretty close to each other. I'm not sure what I've got to go yet. Got about 24 hours to figure that out. But all of them could potentially be really big for my team.
Definitely. Actually, I heard you. I was listening to the amateurs, and I heard you put your question in about the center loop, and it actually didn't sound so bad, just because you have a lot of trades left. So, yeah, definitely in an interesting spot here in the private group, aren't we? With you sitting at 116th overall, Will is almost 100 points ahead of you, and I'm only 5 ahead of him. So it's gonna be interesting. Me with the 2 trades, and you with 6. If you're gonna be able to catch up that 100 points or just under at this stage, it's gonna be very fun here up the top. The top 4 is very close, just 155 points separating all of us, which is very cool. So let's get into, obviously we got who's hot, who's not here to start off with, and DeBellin. Nico Hines actually 2.26% sold. So I imagine Nico Hines to Cleary is the play. Would you do that yourself?
I thought about it early on, but there were just better options. Like initially I was going JDB to Latrell, Hines to Cleary. But yeah, I backed out of that because, I mean, look, Trindle isn't as good for Nico as Moylan, and the Sharks aren't going great. But I mean, you'll still take Nico's 60 to 65 average. Like even in that first game, that wasn't a Panthers game, he still scored like 60 points. And like he didn't look like he was going to get anywhere near that until the last 15 minutes of the game. So we know he can do that. He's one of those very few players that can just score points and make like 40 and 20 minutes consistently. So I just talked myself out of trading him out because, I mean, I'm going to be wanting him as soon as I get rid of him.
Yeah, exactly. And the last 3 weeks for the Sharks, I don't think it could be worse for them. They've played really poorly. So you'd imagine they're going to be throwing everything at these last bunch of weeks to try and get some wins for sure. But yeah, that was kind of the biggest one I noticed here on that list. And then it's Cleary at 4% bring in, which is obviously very obvious, and then everyone else is under that. So let's get into the straight swap potential options for JDB. So if you have a fair bit of cash in the bank, you're likely going to be able to go for Payne Haas or Isaiah Yeo, 2 of the guys that aren't super high ownership. A lot of us probably have Horsburgh at this point. It seems like we're close to 90% for Corey. So yeah, he's still a solid option if you're looking at him, but we won't be going through him today. Who would be if you could just straight swap JDB to anyone in the mid or the edge? Let's just say you want cover across your middle and edge at this stage. Who would be your number 1 and then number 2 pickups?
If you don't have Cameron Murray yet, it would be Murray, but I know a lot have jumped on already, so people are looking for another answer. And Oh, it's really tough to see a clear winner. I mean, McKinnis probably would have been the clear winner, except he's gone up so much now. And Fitzgibbon said in the Sharks press conference, yeah, the analysts talked to him at halftime and they're like, oh, hang on, he's got like 50 tackles. He's got a chance at breaking record. That's part of the reason why he stayed on. So he definitely won't get that every week if that's what you're looking for. But I mean, will he get 55 to 60 minutes and score you 55 points, nearly all in tackles? Maybe. So there's a potential world where McKinnis is the best value gun for points for price option there. But I do really like Payne Haas just because, I mean, he's the top averaging mid. He's had a couple of down weeks, but if they're the down weeks, what are the up weeks that are going to come as the Broncos look to fire up for the top 2 spot?
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I'm so scared of Payne Haas this week and next week. Like, the more times he gets 50 in a row, the bigger chance that 70 plus is coming. And you just have to expect it, I'm pretty sure. I can't get to him personally, straight to it, but if I could, I would be. Obviously, the buy in a couple of weeks, but really, I think he's going to be the best averaging mid over the last 4 games for him. But if you don't want to have that buy coming up, then there's obviously a few other options as well. So yeah, I definitely worried about Payne Haas, and I would grab him if possible. Isaiah Yeo, would he be on your list?
He'd be on my list only if I've got next to no Panthers and Eels. So like if you've got Hopgood, can't get to Cleary and nobody else, yeah, I would go Yeo, because there is a decent chance that he will be rested along with a bunch of other Penrith blokes. We know last year's it's been pretty consistent, easy to predict. If the Panthers are going well, they're near the top of the table. They are not afraid to rest blokes. We've already seen it during the Origin period. That's the only thing that might save them. They've had a little bit of a rest, but I mean, some of the Origin guys really, really haven't. So like Cleary's a prime candidate. Yeo's possibly a good candidate, even though he missed 20. So like Yeo is probably the best if you don't have a lot of extras like a Penasini. If you have guys that are going to be missing in round 27 already and not like 7 or 8 trades, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, part of me feels like Cleary would be the least chance of being rested just because he's had so much rest already. But it seems like he's not one of those guys that needs too long to get back into it. He seemed like that first game, he just wasn't getting involved as much. Seemed a little bit clunky, and then on the weekend he just killed it. So yeah, maybe they just rest everyone. Could definitely be a thing. But yeah, that's something to think about. If you have Cleary, which most of us will, then Yeo could be a little bit of a worry. Or if you have an Edwards already or something like that, for sure. So you spoke about McKinnis. So after watching that, I was like, oh my God, everyone needs to have him in their side. And then I was like, well, he just got absolutely battered. And like, you can't do that every week, obviously. So yes, it's likely that he goes back to about a 50-55 average. And that's close to where he's priced at. So I think he can get better from Isaiah Yeo, from Payne Haas for sure. He's probably similar to a lot of the other options like Tapine. Carrigan might be a little bit ahead, but has that one buy. So yeah, definitely McKinnis should be on a lot of people's radars. He's not the slam dunk, I don't think. If we're basing it off last week, he's not going to get 80 minutes again. So you take away at least 15. I'd say it'd probably be 20 to 25 minutes. We've seen when he has played lock. When I owned him early in the year, I wish he'd scored this well. He got 56, 54, and then 47 minutes and a 53, and then got injured after that, unfortunately. So that was where he was at in that time. So what's the reasoning for him playing more than that 56, 54 minutes? I don't see it, apart from, their defense is that bad and they just need him on there. I don't know. But yeah, he's obviously a great pickup and plays all the rest of the game. So he's definitely a clear option. And then, maybe if you have multiple trades like yourself, those 700K guys like him and Cam Murray at 710, allow you to upgrade that secondary guy that you're talking about by getting like an Appy at 530 who could go boom and be that kind of nice looper for your side. So that's probably a one way to think about it as well. If you want to downgrade closer to a 700 guy rather than going to straight up to Haas or straight up to Yeo, or even to Tapine a little bit more sideways at that 770 odd or whatever Taps is, 772. So yeah, it's just a little food for thought on those guys. You mentioned Cam Murray as well. Yeah. Any sort of worry with him? Obviously, he has been bailed out a little bit in a bunch of these games. Like a few games ago, he got that 55 with a try and then wasn't looking great on the weekend before he got that line break and try at the end. He was going to be about a 40, 43 type of guy before that run. Does that worry you at all, especially with the bye coming up and he's gained a fair bit of cash back?
Oh, it does worry me a little bit, but I mean, Rabbits don't have a lot of players at the moment. They're missing a few again. So, like, I still see his minutes at least being quite consistently high. Like, we saw mid-season that some of them down into like low 60s, 50s, and we were all jumping off if we owned him. So I think he will maintain a bigger minute role and have potential to have the higher base. But yeah, he does need to get a bit more involved to just make sure that he's the Cam Murray that we want rather than the early season Cam Murray that dropped 200K to get to where he is priced at. I still like him, but yeah, that is a mark against him, I guess.
Yeah, I just don't see the big minutes happening against these lesser sides. Not one of them. I don't see it happening this week. Dragons, you wouldn't expect it. Newcastle, maybe if it's close, and then Roosters to finish, they're likely going to be out of the race. So, there'd be no reason to pump him for 50, 60, for more than 65 minutes when they've got the finals next week. If they get there, obviously. If they start to lose matches, then he'll have to play big minutes, I imagine. But yeah, it's just something to think about and note. The bye remaining, I don't think is a slam dunk. But yeah, the two scores, 70 and 64, I can't really argue with, can I? So makes it hard. I do have him on my side too. So
yeah, one thing about Cameron Murray is that like the Rabbits haven't been really that great. I mean, even this game with Latrell back, like Latrell will get a bit more match fit and things will happen, but like the Bunnies still didn't really do much against the Tigers. So I think a bunch of these last games, like especially like a Newcastle game, you'd expect them to win, but you wouldn't expect them to blow them off the park.
Yeah.
So I think a few of these games might be, unless the Bunnies click straight away, I think there will be a few more close games and Murray will be trying to stay out there so that they can consolidate the win and a top 8 spot. But yeah, it's going to be an on or off switch. It's not going to be anywhere in between. So you've got to decide which you think is more likely.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's going to be smash them by 20 or 30 and they kind of click into gear or they won't. It's going to be close. All right, Joe Taps, 772. So a little bit more expensive than these guys. It's a bit of a mark against his name for sure, especially with what Ricky can do with these forward minutes, unfortunately. He does seem to be working into bigger minutes this year now, but he'd have 48 the week before. So it's so hard to work out because since round 12, he's gone up to 58 and then he's got a bunch of games over 60 from there. So that's all great news. But you look at the last few games and they're at just over that 51, but he has that upside, doesn't he? At that 70, that 65 plus. And could be a decent little point of difference guy when he comes up against some solid opponents. Really, it's only the Broncos and Storm in the last 5 that'll be tough. And he doesn't have a bye. So what do you think of Joe Taps?
Yeah, I find it really hard to know where to place him, especially with sort of the Horsburgh situation last week. I did hear that there was a bit of, they mucked up the interchanges a bit, and so they couldn't bring Horse on as early as they liked. So that's potentially one of the solutions as to why Horse disappeared for such a long period of time. But I mean, if Horse just continues to play huge minutes, I don't see Tapine regularly playing like 60 plus minutes. Through that origin period, there are a few games where he did quite well. But like especially near the end there, well, Horse wasn't around for the origin games. So it's a balancing act as to who feeds who and how many minutes do they get. And Ricky Stewart is not going to give us a clear answer. So, look, I think he is going to be a keeper and is going to score like around that 55 mark. But at 772K, you're paying exactly about that price. So whether he's a good buy is debatable, but he is a solid option that will get roughly consistent scores. Somebody who I think it's a bit more boom or bust potentially than Tapine would be like somebody about 740 something, Adam Fanua Blake.
Yeah. He's the next guy on the list. Yeah, 745. And that's the thing with all these these forwards. You got 5 games left and let's just take out a buys for the guys that we're looking at like Adam. And look, they're probably going to be a bit more up and down. You look at Nat Butcher and stuff as well. He's like a 40 and then he gets 70. And it's like, well, it's about a 55 average. And they're all probably going to end up around that 55 for the last 5 games, hey? So it's more, I don't know, none of them seem like a slam dunk as a straight swap. Anyone under Jack DeBellin price, none of them seem like a slam dunk. So they're probably all just going to be similar, aren't they, in the end? So I don't think you're going to completely choose wrong. Like week to week, they're going to be some big differences. Like Adam might score a try and get 70. Butcher might get 45, but then Adam gets 47 the next week and Butcher gets 60 tackles. You know what I mean? Like, so there's a lot going on there. But what do you want to say about Adam?
Yeah, Adam's the type of guy that is that boom or bust play. He's one of the, I would put him in the top 2 props in the comp at the moment, form-wise. And fantasy this year, he's done what we thought he might last year. We can see mid-season, he crashed over for a bunch of tries in relatively good minutes and turned like a 50 or 55 into a 65 or 70. And don't think I've seen a better dream run home than what I've seen for the Warriors right now. So you've got Gold Coast, Tigers, Manly, Dragons, and Dolphins. He could get 2 or 3 or 4 crash over the line tries. The only worry is potentially his minutes not being so consistent with Jazz Tavanga just around the corner. So he will be the 45 to 75 guy if you're keen for that. He's a head-to-head matchup winner, but he might be frustrating and scary to own as well.
Yeah, and you look at that, he's had 1 try since round 11. So he definitely flew under the radar a little bit. They got him in good positions. Obviously, Warriors are playing great, so he seems to get a couple, 2 or 3 chances a game. And sometimes he's crashing over like he did in round 20. But I do think that they're defending him a lot better. So tackle break wise, he had a 4 tackle break game in that round 20 when he scored. But he isn't getting the tackle breaks that he was during that mid-season. So there seem to be 2-3 men on him at a time just to keep him up because they know how damaging he is. So that's just something to note as well. Maybe it's just he's just due for a try or 2, or they're defending him a little bit different as well. Just something to note, I think. All right. Tohu Harris is the next man. We'll stick with the Warriors crew. If you did trade him out, is there any thought in bringing him back in as one of the cheaper mids? We also have to note that they just have a 4-forward bench as well.
Yeah, I think Tohu's the first one on this list that I'm going to just say a flat no. The reason why we traded him out was because, he came out and basically said, I can't remember the coach now. What's
Webster.
But anyway, but coach basically came out and said, we brought Tohu off because he was sick and because there's so many other people that can do a job. And with Jazz and the others coming back, he's basically said if he doesn't need to leave him out there, he won't. So you might see a lot more comes off after 60 minutes instead of pushes for low 70s. So I really think that he's going to be pushing to average much more than 50.
Yeah, the PPM's been up in those lower minutes. So maybe knowing that he's not going to play 80, he's going that little bit harder. Something to note for sure. He's gone 63 and 71, 60 and 58, 31, 36, 59 and 54, all for pretty close to a 1 ppm when his career ppm is 0.69. So that's the only worry, right? Is that when he's on there, he has to be pushing really hard to get those points. And is he going to be a 55 type of guy in 65 minutes? Probably not, hey, for the most part. He'll definitely do it.
Not with those teams on the run home, I don't think. If they were harder, yes, but I don't think with those teams.
Yeah, he has to get a try assist or 2, doesn't he? So, happy for us to leave him out. And then Pat Carrigan, he's probably the guy I'd want most on this list that I can straight swap for, but the buy is very frustrating, I think.
Yeah, he's a hard one because he's on the more expensive side of these straight swaps, but at that price comes some consistency. He's been moving a bit between second row and lock with some of the injuries that they've been having, and he's been staying out there for 80 minutes for the last 3 games. So if he does continue to play very close to 80 minutes, he's going to score very, very well. But yeah, if you own anybody else in a Broncos jersey, round 25 is going to suck. So if you have Payne Haas, I absolutely would not buy Pat Carrigan because that's just going to put a massive hole in your mids. It's going to cost you in that week. But if he's going to be your only Bronco, I could make an argument for it. It's just the fact that he's so close in price to somebody like a Yo or a Haas who's like a definite upgrade. So tough one.
Definitely. Okay, let's move along. So probably the question now I want to ask, we'll go for Tyson Frizell. But just the question now is, if you have 4 trades, I really don't think this is an issue in terms of double trading to get Cleary. But if you have two trades, do you think that's okay, or do you like and leaving 4 rounds with no trades to be able to double trade to get Cleary? Maybe you need Jack DeBellin up to Cleary's 150k or whatever it is, and you can downgrade someone else to maybe they definitely need to be a guy that's going to be consistent, play every game, probably average 40 or something like that. Do you think that's okay, and making sure you have cover in every position, or would you avoid that type of move?
I think you can if you especially need a little bit of depth. If you've got two trades and, for example, want to trade and get Cleary in a red dot, I think that's more of an issue unless it's somebody who is reasonably common, someone like a Brendan Hands who's just sort of sitting in no man's land and is an expensive red dot, and well, you might as well turn him into Cleary with the cash. So, I think it really depends on your depth as to whether you can go straight away. But like, it's very yuck to have a whole month's worth of no trade. So ideally, you don't. But I mean, there are a couple of situations where it might work out.
Yes, you'd probably want 21 green dots when you're uncovering every position if you're going to leave yourself with none now. Something like that.
Yeah,
really.
You have to go very close to 21 green dots.
Yeah, it's probably the only play for sure. It's definitely a tough run because it's like, well, you do need Cleary for the end. But yeah, how much is it going to cost you if there are injuries and you don't have cover in a certain position? Like if you don't have hooker cover and you've just got Grant and he gets injured next week. It's all what ifs, but yeah, some very relevant and serious what ifs, because it's footy, right? Tyson Frizell, he's someone that I do have some interest in. He's very inconsistent as well. He seems to be a 60-plus guy, or he goes into the 40s, and he's very solid somewhere in that position. What are your thoughts on Tice, especially in a team that's going pretty well and on a bit of a roll at the moment?
Yeah, it's a bit of a surprise. Some of these late season resurgences, like the Knights, were not somebody I would have picked to make the 8 at all about 6 weeks ago. But now they're definitely in the conversation, pushing guys like potentially the Sharks or even the Rabbitohs if they can't pull it together out of that spot. I think they're only 1 point out of the 8 now, and that is on the back of Kalyn Ponga and some of their outside backs like Dane Gagai going absolutely really huge over the last little period and just throughout this year in general. I think it needs to be a bit more of a battle for Tyson to do well. So a game like the Storm game 2 weeks ago, he did quite well. He got 30 tackles, couple of tackle busts and good meters because that's what he was required to do. Last week, they touched up the Raiders and he wasn't required to do as much running, and it was all sort of the outside backs doing the damage. So I think he can be a good option, but he needs to get that little bit of attack that he can sometimes do, but you don't want to always rely on attack for a second rower unless their name's David Fafita. So good one and spicy, but not like nearly everyone on this list. It's not a slam dunk.
Yeah, it is very interesting actually looking at the teams that he scored pretty well against. He's going a couple of good scores against Panthers, 58, 57. So those tackle numbers are up. He seems to be a guy, he's just going to get tackle breaks every week. So he gets more ball when it is closer. As you said, they can't go to the outside backs as quickly because there's less gaps. So they have to use Tyson a bit more. So yeah, very interesting. And then they've got Dolphins and Dogs the next few weeks. He probably needs to score a try, doesn't he, in those type of games before he gets a few harder ones. So yeah, definitely interesting and fairly cheap. Someone to keep on your radar. All right, if you don't have Dave Fafita, obviously if you can straight swap Jack DeBellin to Fafita, I think that's a must decision. But I don't think I'd trade for it. Very interesting at the moment. He isn't playing 80 minutes. Hey, is it the back tightness? Is it just coach's choice? I'm not sure. Hey.
I wish I knew. It's back to the watch and wait situation because it's very scary when we know in the past David Fafita's gone off after 60 minutes, not come back, and you're like, oh, that 47 could have been a 60 or that 53 could have been an 80 if he had been on the park for that try that was scored over there. So I think he's still just probably clearly the top edge option, but if he isn't going to be playing 80, he's not as clear as some of the others, but he has dropped a bit of cash, so his price is a little bit more appealing now. So it's 800 and a little bit instead of 900. So yeah, he's still a good pickup, and yeah, there's not really much more to say. He's David Fafita. We know what he can do.
Yeah, he gets 60s and 70s very easily, doesn't he? And he did get held up. He was very, very close to getting close to 100 with a try there, it would have been. So, yeah, that's that. Let's go to Dane Gagai, 668. He's actually a little bit cheaper than I would have thought, considering he had just a couple of lower games through that middle period about a month or so ago, 24, 41, and a 31. But other than that, he's 50 plus all the time and has 70 upside, doesn't he? So, if you do need a centre, is he top priority, him and Lomax?
I think it really has to be. I mean, if you filter this a little bit, he looks not must-have, but like if you're looking for a centre, you'd nearly pick him over Garrick at this point. I mean, 52.6 average this year. Knight's humming. Knight's going really well. And let's have a look at what his low games were. 27. Panthers. 24. Sharks, where the Sharks beat him by 20. 31 Panthers. Like, if you take those out, that's probably a 60 average, hey? Like, and that's unreal for a pure centre. He's getting massive run meters. He's getting massive tackle breaks. Like, I think I've said a few times, his base is the best out of any pure centre. Well, you get 168 meters and 17.9 tackles, put them together, and you've got nearly 35 points before you add anything. And, like, he's doing a lot for the team. I can't see anything under 50, and, like, over 55 or even 60 is a possibility with Dolphins, Bulldogs, Rabbits, Sharks, and Dragons to finish. Like, that's a dream pod.
Yeah. I think if you need a centre, I think he's the must-have. Lomax has been amazing. He's getting so many runs, but yeah, Gagai first, Lomax second, for sure. Very, very interesting. Latrell Mitchell's the next one on the list, 725. You could obviously straight swap Jack DeBellin to Latrell. So we'll speak about, obviously you could do it to Gagai as well if you wanted to, or that's maybe Gagai and you can upgrade somewhere else with the extra cash if you don't need a mid or an edge. I'm personally thinking about something like Latrell, but having Murray as well, it's probably pushing me away a little bit. But the other options are going to be DCE. They're going to be Munster. So we'll speak about them in a second. But let's talk about Latrell to kick things off. What are your thoughts on grabbing him at the moment? Do you think he can be a 60 guy for the rest of the year?
I do. Like, the Rabbits have been pretty ordinary, and Latrell came out and did a little bit, but not really take control of the game, and he still scored a high 60s. Like, what's the Rabbits' draw for the rest of the year? It's pretty easy, I
Sharks,
think.
Dragons, Knights,
Latrell
Roosters.
Yeah, there you go. Like, there's not many fantastic teams in there. Like, even really, it doesn't matter unless they're like a top 4 team that can defend them really well. So, in all honesty, we've seen post-Origin Latrell. He's like post-Origin Teddy most of the time, but I think he's sort of replaced him now. And like, he could go 60 plus average quite easily, and have some 80s and 90s in there.
Yeah, last year, 80 and 84, 98 the game before Origin 3. Very impressive in that. And then 2021, he's got a 92 and a 93 and a 66 in the back end. So, yeah, very impressive on that. And we know that's, he's a guy that could make or break a season, can't he? So, definitely a great option. But, yeah, if you haven't got Murray yet, maybe Latrell's your guy instead of Murray if you do need someone in that wing fullback position for sure. Let's go to DCE and Munster. Who would you pick now? They just continue to stay in that same price bracket of very, very close together. 3K difference. DCE 751, Munster at 748. Do you have someone with a slight edge at the moment, or just take your pick?
I think it depends what you want for your team. Like, Munster's going to be the 90 guy, and DC is going to be the kick meter guy who gets you 50 or 60. So Munster is currently lower owned in the top 1K. Yeah. He's about 20 or like 15%. DC is heading up towards 36. Like 20-30%.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
And
so
I just figure that if you want to go big and make a couple of ranks, Munster could be the one because he does have that ceiling. It really depends, I think, what you need.
Yeah, I suppose like DCE's got more higher games than Munster this year, though. He's got two 90s, bunch of 70s. Munster's got the 1 ton and 170. So, yeah, it's interesting. He's kind of changed his tune a little bit this year.
Switched this year, hey?
Yeah, which, obviously before that, he was that guy that would get 75, 80, 90. Last year, there's a bunch of them, 81, 93, 76. So, I suppose if you look at the matchups, they both have to play Penrith. Yeah, he plays them. Munster plays them this week. DCE plays them in 2 weeks. They've got Warriors, who's the other good one for DCE, like the other good team. Whereas Munster has Broncos in the last game. He also has Canberra. And you say Titans, like on their day, they could be all right as well. So I don't really think it matters who they play. Would you agree with that? Like good team, bad team, they're pretty consistent across the board, right?
Yeah, and Munster in the past, especially the last couple of years, he's been a guy who almost does better against some of those hard teams. Look, unless they're really dominated, he's almost averaged better in some of those difficult games. So I think you can't go wrong with Munster or DC, really. It's just going to be whether... Is there a slight chance that Melbourne rest a few of their stars if a top four spot's locked up?
Yeah, I
I don't
definitely
think
think
they
that's
can now that they lost to Knights, hey?
because they haven't had a rest yet. Oh, Munster did actually. That's right. He was hungover, whatever he was. Well, Grant's the big worry there, I'd say. Just because he hasn't had a rest, he's played all of them. But yeah, I'd say they're likely going to be still pushing for that top four. But yeah, they got Panthers this week. They likely lose, and that just puts them back a peg. But yeah, I'm personally, I think I'm leaning a little bit to Cherry Evans, just. But yeah, I don't think either way you're gonna miss out. So still definitely that conversation we were having a few weeks ago about those two. It's still very relevant here. Let's move to our couple of cash downs this week. Dan Russell and Nick Gotrick. So almost 100k difference now. Russell's at 312, coming off a couple of good efforts, and obviously Jack DeBellin out. So that means Russell probably keeps his 80-minute job, right? He's a guy that you could actually even play each week. You know, he should be about a 40 guy. He probably should have had that try on the weekend. It was an interesting way of going about it. But yeah, as a cash down, plays every the last 5 games, he's decent, hey?
Yeah, there's been a few of these guys this year that have just appeared mid or late season that have been really solid options, and I think he is definitely one you can look at. The only thing I'd even slightly worry about is Ben Murdoch-Masila back next week, but I mean, he's done a pretty good job while he's been there, so I think that he definitely can keep that spot. Jack Bird's knee probably is just...
Yeah, I think it's done for
I don't think it's going to come good. Russell's got one hand on that spot for the rest of the year, to be honest.
Yeah, seems like he'll at least play every week. And 30 to 60 minutes, 80 minutes fairly likely as well. Kotrick as a cash down, as a dual position centre wing fullback, may keep his spot in the team. He's going to be fine, right? If you need a cash down that's going to play.
Yeah, he's all right. I mean, he's not fancy. He's not real fun. He'll probably score you 20 points or 15 points. But, I mean, that's points. And he's literally as cheap as you can get with dual. And if he goes away, then he's a looper. So it's not the greatest and most amazing cash cow.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between this point of the season and early season. We're looking for money making. But he's going to be one of the guys that works in your team late season.
Definitely. All right, we've got 4 guys to go, probably a couple of minutes before we lose our Zoom. Appy Coruscant at 5:30. I spoke about him last week as the perfect looper because he's going to get 50 plus or he's going to get 28. Still the exact same for me this week. I think he's a solid one at a mid price who's going to cover Grant if he's going to go down, if he happens to go down injured. You agree with that?
Yeah, I'm a little bit less happy now that Simpkins on the bench because it might look more like a 27, but I mean, he's still a loop.
Yeah, definitely. Preston, would you hold him?
I mean, he just kind of continues to do enough. Hey, if you don't have many trades, I don't see a big reason to get rid of him.
Yeah, simple as that.
If you can, and you have Cleary upgrades you can do, like Preston and JDB to Cleary and like a Coruscant, maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
But if you don't have too many trades, I mean, he's doing all right.
Yeah, I'd be holding if that wasn't clearly in your grasp. Joseph Manu, clearly holding him, right?
Yeah, I saw people talking about how his sort of harder games are over. And I mean, he's lost 50k now and he's kind of priced where he's supposed to be now rather than 50k more. So you either sell now or you just keep writing decent scores.
Yeah, well, it's his lowest score of the year. Even at centre, it was a 25 in round 7 when they sucked. Still in that one. So I'd imagine he bounces back against Manly. And he has no real hard games to come. So yeah, I think he's fine. And last one, Brendan Hands. Very unfortunate for myself. I do own him. I think I'm just going to hold off on my last trade and maybe use him as a as a trade if nothing comes about. Like if no injuries come about the next few weeks, I might move him on then. But he's obviously a clear guy you can use. But I'd rather hold the trade than trade him for an 18th man at the moment, I think. Unless you need someone to play as your 17th man, I'm probably holding. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that I was looking at something like this as well. I don't have hands, but there's a couple of trade out combos in my team that I thought, oh, that sounds good. And then you're left over with a bit of money and you're like, oh, I feel obliged to spend it.
Yeah.
But if you have somebody like Hands who's just sitting there as a solid pot of money that can't go up and down unless he goes back onto the bench, you can then use that when you want to get to a good person that you want to, rather than getting a substandard option.
Very much so. It's good to have you back, mate. Everyone was missing you in the comments. Bring Scoop back. So it's great to have you here, and I hope everyone appreciates it. So thank you, and good luck running off to your next bit of work, mate. See you later.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
See you guys.